line or follow up with us on social media to stay plugged in for future events. And sorry, got distracted. And after today's briefing, we'll also be circulating a feedback survey. We hope you take the opportunity to share your voice and feedback with us. In this survey, you can also let us know what issues matter to you. Now it's my pleasure to pass it along to our Executive Director, Shaitia Spruell.
Hello, good morning. My name is Shaitia Spruell. I am the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. It is my honor and privilege to be with you all this morning, depending on where you are on this raining morning. But I'm here to talk a little bit about the Commission and the mission of the Commission. The Commission was legislatively created in 1998, 26 years ago on May 29th will be our birthday, as an independent state agency seeking to advance women towards full equality in all areas of life and promote the rights and opportunities for all women and girls across the state. The Commission consists of 19 volunteer commissioners who are appointed by the governor, the Senate president, the Speaker of the House, and the Caucus of Women Legislators, who is also here with us today. The Commission also represents and recognizes all women, regardless of their age, race, color, creed, abilities, language, socioeconomic status, immigration status, sexual orientation, or gender assigned at birth. Together, our purpose is to provide a permanent, effective voice for women throughout Massachusetts. But we can't do all this work without you. As a legislatively created body, our charter is clear. We exist to study, review, and report on the status of women of the Commonwealth. And that's why we continuously seek your input as we work towards fulfilling our mission. Advancing the status of women and girls across the Commonwealth in line with our mission, the Commission regularly conducts regional public hearings across the state to collect testimony and opinions on women's issues and concerns. Our public hearings create a safe and open space for all women and our male allies in their communities to be heard and share their lived experience and the issues that impact their daily lives. Any subjects surrounding issues that women face or obstacles that hinder the ability for all women to experience equity are welcome topics. We incorporate this information into our annual reports, our research, our data, our policy recommendations, and we also make sure that we share this with our appointing authorities, among others. And that's why we're here today. The stories we heard, the feedback we all heard tied back to our legislative priorities. And the testimony gathered at public hearings directly informs the Commission's legislative agenda and policy priorities we advocate year-round for. Over the past year, our hearings have highlighted concerns regarding disparities in access to essential resources, highlight instances of domestic violence, and highlight instances of inadequate representation in policy and decision-making spaces. What we hear is what we take on. We share, again, with our legislators and everyday decision makers across the Commonwealth. But we can only change that which we know about. So we encourage you today and every day to tell your story. Speak up to make change. We're thrilled that you're here with us to learn more. And now I will turn it back to our Vice Chair, Meredith Tooke.
Greetings, everyone. We're back again, and I see so many awesome names being dropped into the chat. Big Sister Eastern Mass, welcome, welcome. Women's Fun, welcome from Eastern and Western Mass, all of that. Everyone, I can't holler all of you out, but I want to say thank you for being here with us. So back to me. We are going to start talking about the findings from our public hearings. I'm going to start with Dartmouth's public hearing. We did Dartmouth, and Dartmouth was an in-person hearing last November, and it was our last hearing for the 2023. We held it at the University of Massachusetts in Dartmouth. We had a little over 100 people joined us in person and online. We heard about several key issues to women in the Bristol County and that area. Housing insecurity, very, we hear that everywhere. Early education, access and importance of early education. We talked about menstrual product accessibility. We talked about diversity on public boards. We talked about healthcare and doula, birth and justice. We talked about economic stability, gender based discrimination and violence. We talked about measures on how to promote well being for self well being, empowerment of all the residents within the region and the area. I mean, as a result, as you can see with all everything listed on this slide, we are uplifting the following pieces of legislation to combat these issues. We are following an act to provide affordable and accessible, high quality early education and care to promote child care development and well being, supporting the economy in the Commonwealth. That is on our list of endorsed and priorities. Um, H489, often referred to as the Common Start Bill. We are part of that coalition. An act to increase access to disposable menstrual products. A lot of you know what is the I Am bill. We're part of that coalition. An act to promote diversity on public boards and commissions. We're on that coalition. And an act relative to birth and justice in the Commonwealth on that coalition. If we go to the next slide, will take us to our virtual hearing that we did in January, which was focused on housing. And this hearing, um, we made that decision last year to do a virtual hearing on housing, so we would be able to get all the voices across the Commonwealth since we hear about housing so much. Housing is on everyone's mind lately, whether it's the cost of rent, the high interest rates, the lack of accessibility and access. Housing is one of our most crucial issues this year. We held a virtual public hearing in January focusing on the specific topic and learned a lot about the women of Massachusetts and what they are facing around housing. Our key issues that we heard was that we need rent stabilization. Rent control was the term that was used, but we have to talk about rent stabilization more than rent control. Eviction protections, affordable housing, and not just affordable, but really housing that we can afford to live in. Because sometimes the term is used loosely. Access to disability benefits, domestic violence. Domestic violence is so important when we talk about housing stabilization, and the population of those that are houseless. And we have to talk about support for our rural communities, women veterans, and our elders, our mature community. That's a big issue, housing. Legislative recommendations that we have heard and we are following. We're following the Affordable Homes Act, bonding capital expenditures and state assets. We are also following the act enabling local options for tenant protections, act promoting housing opportunity and mobility through eviction ceiling, an act to promote access to council and housing stability in Massachusetts. So needed. An act to establish an Office of Fair Housing and Fair Housing Trust Fund, an act to create the Massachusetts Healthy Homes Program, an act relative to Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. And I know you're saying that I went through that quickly, but we're going to share everything that we're doing today in this slideshow with all of the attendees today. So you'll get all of these numbers, you'll get everything. And we ask that you continue to support us and follow us, right? Um, so we're going to go back to the Gardner public hearing, and I'm going to give it back over to our Executive Director, Shaitia Spruell.
I'm just going to give a second so we can make space for our interpreters to switch. We're looking for ASL Jack.
So thank goodness we're not on radio, because radio does not like dead ear.
All right, here we
I
go.
had to put a little
Hi,
humor in
Jack.
there.
Thank you for your patience. All right, getting back into it. Again, I'm Jaitia. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we heard at our Gardner public hearing in March. We do strive to make every effort to represent every corner of the state, and we're definitely super intentional about the locations we choose, from east to west, north to south, and we chose Gardner for our final hearing of fiscal year 24. At Mount Wachusett Community College, we heard a lot of issues around predatory lending against women, and specifically women of color. We heard about concerns or positions on Healthy Youth Act. We heard about nursing and the lack of access to birthing spaces and birthing justice. And we also heard a lot more about housing and housing discrimination at this particular hearing. Some of the legislative recommendations we heard and I wanted to uplift were the bill enact relative to healthy youth, enact to establish a resolution trust fund for receipt of reasonable mortgage payments, enact relative to birthing justice in the Commonwealth, enact establishing Medicare for all in Massachusetts, and enact relative to NDAs relating to a claim of discrimination, non-payment of wages or benefits, retaliation, harassment, or violation of public policy in employment. These are just a few, and I do want to remind folks, all of these hearings, we typically hear a lot of the same things, but this year we heard a lot about housing, we heard a lot about access, and we heard a lot about representation. So I hope that you all see that as we go through our legislative priorities in the next couple of slides. You've heard a little bit about our legislative recommendations and what came out of our hearings, but now I'd like to welcome our various subject matter experts and deep dive on 4 specific priorities today. And with that, I will introduce Commissioner Divya Chaturvedi. And Laura Cabrera will be coming right after.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Divya Chaturvedi, and I'm a state commissioner. I was appointed by the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators. My background and work is with nonprofits that serve immigrant communities, including immigrant survivors of domestic and sexual violence and low-income immigrant women. Today, it is my pleasure to talk about this very important piece of legislation, Bill H 3084, an act relative to language access and inclusion. This bill seeks to require state agencies to provide timely, culturally competent oral language services to all limited English proficiency individuals who seek to access services, programs, or activities relative to language access and inclusion. This bill would require state agencies to offer interpretation services and translating of vital documents, would enforce language access plan standards for state departments, which includes data collection, and public agencies to employ statewide and regional language access coordinators and a language access advisory board to help in implementation and technical assistance. And so why do we need that? Nearly 1 in 10 Massachusetts resident is limited English proficient. However, many of our state agencies provide essential services and information only in English, creating a huge barrier for thousands of families, women, and children to access much needed resources, critical information regarding healthcare, educational resources for their children, housing, employment, and so much more. The Language Access and Inclusion Act would enable language access at public-facing state agencies, ensuring non-English speaking residents can meet their basic needs and fully participate in their communities. As an immigrant myself, and working with low-income immigrant women, refugees, asylees, and immigrant survivors of domestic violence in Massachusetts, I know firsthand the immense barrier they face due to lack of language access, often struggling to navigate essential services, access critical information, or access resources necessary for their well-being. Imagine being in a new country, surviving incredible hardship and trauma, and then facing the additional obstacle of not understanding the language spoken around you or being able to access the resources that you need to ensure your safety and well-being, as well as the safety and well-being of your children. This is the reality for many immigrant survivors. I'll take a quick moment to share an example of a survivor I worked with who was eligible for housing, but did not know the forms, could not speak English, did not know how to fill up the forms, did not know, what documents she needed, could not access that resource for many months, wasting a lot of her time, and she remained in an unsafe condition because of this language barrier. However, in my work, I've also seen how language access can transform lives, empowering individuals to seek help, access resources, understand their rights, and for so many survivors and their children to access and support services, they need to heal and rebuild their lives. Language can also create pathways for economic mobility, and it becomes an asset rather than a barrier. Working as a trained interpreter, being a bilingual, workforce can create economic empowerment pathways for so many people who need it, while also helping to remove this huge language barrier for people in the Commonwealth. So how do we ensure that communities and people whose primary language is not English are properly supported with linguistically and culturally appropriate resources? The Language Access and Inclusion Bill would be a significant step towards equity and inclusion. Everyone must have equal access to our government, no matter what language they speak. As Massachusetts is one of the most linguistically diverse states in the nation, we strongly urge you to issue a favorable report for an act relative to language access and inclusion. Thank you. I think I can pass on to Laura, who will speak next.
Hello, good morning. I will be speaking in the language of my heart, in Spanish. Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Laura Cabrera. Estamos apoyando el acceso de inclusión al idioma. Soy parte de la Comisión de Mujeres y cofundadora y miembro de Latinas 413 en los Berkshires. Trabajo como bilingüe counselor and advocate en el Elizabeth Freeman Center, enfocada en mujeres inmigrantes que sufren o se ven afectadas por la violencia doméstica y sexual.
Elena, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Elena.
Okay.
Laura, can you
Now,
do English and Spanish?
No, Elena, I think we can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, it's working? Okay. I should start again.
Yes.
Ok. Buenos días, mi nombre es Laura Cabrera, soy parte de la Comisión de Mujeres y cofundadora y miembro de Latinas 413 en los Berkshires. Trabajo como bilingüe counselor and advocate en Elizabeth Freeman Center, enfocada en las mujeres inmigrantes que sufren o se ven afectadas por la violencia doméstica y sexual. Vine a vivir a los Berkshires hace 20 años. En ese momento la inclusión del lenguaje era nula y las
I'm
tareas
sorry,
cotidianas.
Laura. Excuse me. Can
Yes.
everyone hear her okay? It's a little low. Laura, we can't hear you.
There?
Yes.
Okay. You want me to start again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Buenos días, mi nombre es Laura Cabrera, soy parte de la Comisión de Mujeres y cofundadora y miembro de Latinas 413. En los Berkshires, trabajo como bilingüe counselor and advocate en Elizabeth Freeman Center enfocada en las mujeres inmigrantes que sufren o se ven afectados por la violencia doméstica y sexual. Vine a vivir a los Berkshires hace 20 años. En ese momento, la inclusión del lenguaje era nula y las tareas cotidianas, como comprar comida, ir al bus y en general la comunicación. Fue un reto. Si esas tareas eran difíciles, imagínense cómo fue llevar al médico a mi hijo que necesitaba tener 5 operaciones, tener acceso a recursos gratuitos y establecer una denuncia por violencia doméstica. Todo por falta de información en mi primer idioma. También estar embarazada de mi hija y no tener la información de que existían las estampillas de comida. Toda esa historia que pasé, todos esos retos me hicieron fuerte, pero también me hicieron apasionada por abogar por el lenguaje, el acceso e inclusión al idioma. En mi experiencia personal hoy en día y profesional, me han ayudado a me he encontrado con limitaciones al realizar trámites tan importantes como solicitar la manutención de los niños de child support. Debido a que en la corte familiar, la aplicación de la manutención de niños solo está en inglés. En mi experiencia personal, tuve que llenar más de 3 veces esa aplicación porque no la entendía y tuve que ir con alguien que hablara inglés. Hoy en día, eso pasó hace 8 años, hoy en día hace 20 años seguimos con el mismo problema. No hay traducción en español. Tengo muchas clientas que van y no pueden hacer el child support. Tiene que ir a alguien que hable inglés y se encuentran siempre con esa barrera. También la barrera de navegar los campamentos de verano, las aplicaciones están en inglés. Muchas de las mujeres hoy en día se ven solas con los niños, entonces tienen que buscar esos recursos. Es muy difícil navegar cuando no se habla el idioma en inglés y solo en el español. En los Berkshires hay muchas mujeres que abogan por la inclusión del lenguaje, intérpretes, pero no es suficiente. Necesitamos más traducción, como lo dije, en el child support, en los campamentos de verano y acompañamiento a esas mujeres que a veces están sufriendo violencia doméstica y entre otras cosas. La inclusión del lenguaje nos da el poder a las mujeres para hacer mejores decisiones sobre nuestro futuro, finanzas y educación. Las voces de las mujeres que por años han callado. Las mujeres inmigrantes estamos listas para ser incluidas en decisiones importantes que nos afectan directamente a nosotros, a nuestros hijos, a nuestras hijas y por ende a nuestro futuro y el futuro de nuestras nuevas generaciones. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll be bringing on our
Sunny
commissioner
Daly.
to speak on, Sunny Daly to speak on birthing, the doula bill, excuse me.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sunny Daly, and I'm a regional commissioner for the Cape Cod and Islands Commission on the Status of Women living on Nantucket, and I've also been a doula in private practice for 20 years. I'm speaking on an act relative to Medicaid coverage for doula services, H 1240 S 782. The proposed bill would ensure that doula services are covered by both Medicare and MassHealth. It will also create a registry of doulas in order to regulate reimbursements and standardize competencies. This bill will also create a commission made up of doulas and members of communities with worse maternal health outcomes, including members of the LGBTQ+ community, those dependent on MassHealth, and those who have experienced maternal or sexual trauma. Why this is so important is because doula statistics support better outcomes for families. The statistics alone include reductions in the length of labor by 25%, reductions in overall cesarean birth rates by 50%, reductions in the use of pain medications by 30%, reductions in requests for epidurals by 60%. And I think the most impressive statistics are increased mother-infant contact after birth, increased rates of breastfeeding, overall healthier infants at 6 weeks of age. And though we can't quantify it, we know there's a positive impact for birthing people and their families when they have information and support. The other reason this is critically important is I've attended hundreds of births, but only about 10% of those on island. And the biggest reason for that is because of the cost associated with hiring private doulas. Being able to receive benefits of the doula support with MassHealth and Medicare would remove barriers for so many families seeking that additional support. It would also remove barriers for incoming doulas to receive training without additional cost, which right now those combinations are limiting access to doula support and the number of doulas that are practicing. In fact, on Nantucket, I am the only doula practicing. I do not represent all cultures or languages on island, and being able to have a more representative community of people both accessing services and providing services would just make a world of difference. What that looks like in practice is that families prenatally would receive more education and the ability to role play scenarios that they could then feel confident walking into their prenatal visits and asking questions and advocating for their needs. That in turn also frees up providers to spend their time addressing critical needs and not answering questions that could be addressed with doula services. During birth, it means that instead of relying on nursing staff for supportive care, which studies show that only 6 to 12% of nursing time during labor and birth is spent in supportive care, families could receive continuous care, which again provides them the opportunity to ask questions and advocate for their needs. That doula is almost like a medical interpreter for things that are very standard in hospitals, but very foreign to people who are often wading into this care for perhaps the first time in their lives. It also means that when birth takes a left-hand turn, which it can, that there's somebody there to meet their emotional needs and informational needs and offer support that is not something that medical staff can do, especially in emergency scenarios. Postpartum, it means that there's somebody there to help process the experience and answer the 9,000 questions that will come up because you have a brand new human that doesn't speak your language. All of this means that there is a continuum of support through the prenatal, birth, and postpartum experiences, and we know that that produces better outcomes for the birthing person and their family and healthier families over the long run. So I ask that you please pass this. Right now, the bill has been reported favorably by the committee and referred to the Senate Ways and Means, and we'd like to not see any further delays and hope that this bill will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. Now we are bringing up Commissioner Gamel Di Carvalho and Brianna Sullivan.
Hi, my name is Gamel Di Carvalho. I live in Natick. I am Senate President Spilka appointee, and I am Vice Chair of the Legislative Committee. My background is in nonprofit work for children's behavioral health. And I'm here to talk about an act supporting parents running for public office, PRO. It's H 669 and Senate Bill 422. This bill would specify that expenses for childcare during campaigning would not be considered personal use expenses, which would then allow campaign funds to be used, defined as both casual and professional services, and any cost directly related to childcare that occurs due to campaigning. I myself would have benefited greatly from a bill like this when I was running for a local office in the town of Natick for a select board. I was running during the height of the pandemic, so I actually was able to benefit from many of the campaign events being virtual. But at the same time, when we were doing campaign events in the community, I didn't have an ability to use any kind of campaign funds for childcare. At the time, I had a 5-year-old son. And what we and many of the volunteers in my campaign, who are also mothers and parents of young children, had to bring our kids with us to those campaign events. And so there was many a Saturday in downtown Natick where we're holding campaign signs and several of our children are playing in the town square park right behind us. So you're kind of having to do this dual splitting of attention at the same time. And so it's difficult enough to run for office. But when you have a logistical issue like this and something that is clearly a need that is campaign related, can't be supported by campaign funds, it creates barriers for people to see themselves as able to be run for a public office. And it's for the person running for office as well, but even for the volunteers that are helping with the campaign, childcare is an issue for people who are caregiving for children. And that's something that would limit access if this bill isn't supported. So being supported. So we ask that you support this bill and have it pass this legislative session. I'm going to also bring Commissioner Brianna Sullivan to speak about her experience as well.
Good almost afternoon, everybody. I'm Brianna Sullivan. I live in Newburyport and I'm the chair of the Essex County Commission on the Status of Women. I was appointed to this position by the State Commission, and I'm very passionate about this bill. I ran for state representative in 2016 when I had a 2.5-year-old son. I had 2 part-time jobs that equaled to about 40 hours a week, even though I was the primary caretaker of my son. My husband worked extremely long hours. And frankly, it was very difficult. And the clear through line between being able to pay for a sitter while you go do campaign events seems pretty straightforward to me when you look at all the other things that campaign funds can cover. And also when you think about the disproportionate impact or disproportionate share of parenting responsibilities that women have, and then the disparity between women in elected office, even in our own state house. This is one small piece of a bigger puzzle, but it would make a huge difference. I remember pushing my toddler in his stroller, trying to knock on doors, handing him my phone, even though I know a 2.5-year-old really shouldn't have his phone on a screen facing a screen for hours, because I didn't have anybody to watch him, and I was cutting back on my hours at work, and I couldn't afford to pay a sitter multiple times a week. I remember cutting the canvassing short because he was getting fussy and the screen wasn't doing its trick, and I couldn't focus on the voters that I was speaking to. I remember getting dressed up for a fundraiser and handing my son off to various friends and family at the event and finagling to get him home and to bed with somebody else while I was giving a speech about why I should be elected and asking for people's support and their money. And it's really hard to have your brain focused totally on that job of running for office, especially somebody trying to get into elected office going against a incumbent who, especially for like state rep or Senate, they have a lot more time to campaign. And it was hard. It was hard to juggle campaigning and parenting simultaneously. Unfortunately, I didn't win. Paying a sitter to watch my son so that I could canvass or dial for dollars or attend a community meeting or speak at a campaign rally would have helped my campaign. It would have helped me do what I needed to do to win. And this is why childcare costs should be an authorized campaign expenditure. As I said when I started, it is directly related to conducting campaign activities. So I strongly, strongly encourage all of our elected officials to push for the passage of this bill. It obviously costs nothing to the Commonwealth. It's our own supporters whose money would be going to these childcare activities. I feel confident any of my supporters would have wholeheartedly said, yes, absolutely. Go canvas and pay a sitter. I'd be happy to cover that cost for you. So it's a no-brainer for me. I really think this needs to pass this session. And it's, like I said, one small step to getting especially more women into elected office who are living real lives and have real struggles. And that's why they need to use campaign funds for childcare. So please vote for this bill and tell your colleagues or everybody else as elected officials to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Next on your screen, you'll see Commissioner Jean Fox to speak about the Increasing Access to Menstrual Products Bill. Jean?
Thank you, Shaitia. And welcome, everybody. My name is Jean Fox. I hail from the great town of Freetown in southeastern Massachusetts. I was appointed to the State Commission in 2016 by the Speaker of the House. And prior to that, I served 9 years on the Bristol County Commission on the Status of Women, which was the third regional commission for what we now have 11 in Massachusetts. So I'm here to speak in strong favor of an act to increase access to disposable menstrual products, otherwise known as the I Am Bill, H534 and Senate 2491. The overview: the I Am Bill was championed by lead sponsors Senator Jalen and Representatives Livingstone and Barber. This bill would ensure access to free menstrual products to all menstruating individuals in public schools, in homeless shelters, and in incarcerated facilities. And it also contains very important language that would ensure the products are truly accessible without stigmatizing the individual seeking them. Why is this bill so important to me? Well, as I noted early on, I spent 9 years as a Bristol County Commissioner. And in those years, I worked very, very closely with the Women's Fund of Southeastern Massachusetts and the YWCA of Southeastern Massachusetts, and both of them are here today. And I want to say that this bill was born in Bristol County. It became very clear early on that girls weren't going to school when they were on their period. Why is that? Well, because not every school had products for them. The ones that did, if the nurse had them, great. If the nurse didn't, maybe there was a machine or a vending machine if they had the money to get them. So it was easier just to stay home. Keep in mind that 3 cities in Bristol County are gateway cities: Taunton, New Bedford, Fall River. All have lower educational attainment rates and all have fantastic challenges in the educational arena. So we need to get our girls in school. We need to keep our girls in school. Come to find out, similar situations existed in the shelters in the region. These women couldn't afford the products. The question became for them, do they choose food? Do they choose housing? Or do they choose a menstrual product? It's absurd. What we've seen in Bristol County and increasingly across the state is a concerted movement behind this bill. In the county, they've continued to advocate on behalf of women and girls who need these products. The YWCA launched its own fundraiser. The city of Fall River received a grant to help get these products available to people in the schools, in the prisons, and in the shelters. I feel that their advocacy has been heard, but I feel that it's time for us to move this bill forward. Again, I'm very proud of Bristol County and the hard work they've done behind this to make this fair for everyone. We are on this coalition, as was mentioned earlier by Meredith Tuitt, and I've been participating. I really, really hope I can have your support on this. We thank you so much. It was, let's see, it was House concurred in March of this year. And in the Senate, the bill was favorably reported by the committee and referred to Ways and Means in the Senate last year. So let's move this one to the finish line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean, Brianna, Gimel, Laura, Divya. Thank you all for sharing that with us. If you're looking for more information on our legislative priorities, please feel free to check us out. Our new website, MCSW.org. We have all of our legislative priorities for the last few years or few sessions, but 2023-2024 is live there. If some of you have been following the work of the commission, you might see that our list looks a little different. We have priorities up on the website, but we have an even longer list of endorsed bills between the state and the regional commission. So if you're looking for more information, please feel free to check out that website, and always feel free to email us, follow us on social media, and everything else, all of the things. I would like at this time to answer any questions. If folks have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm sorry.
Shaiti, I'm sorry. Can I jump in before you do
Yes,
questions?
ma'am, please.
I just feel that we've had such an awesome turnout. I just wanted to do a shout out, if you don't mind. I want to shout out Hampshire, Franklin, CSW, Worcester, CSW, the League of Women Voters National Delegation. I want to shout out Plymouth County, CSW, the YWCA Southeastern Mass, Plymouth, CSW. I want to shout out Big Sister Eastern Mass, the Cape and the Island CSW, Elder Services of the Cape. I want to do Bay Path and Bay State Health. Thank you. Women's Money Matters. Thank you. The Office of the Assistant Leader, Rep. Paish's staff is here. Brockton CSW, welcome, welcome. That's the city of Boston, a city of Brockton CSW. We have Mindful and Melanated is on here with us. That's Mental Health for Women. We have Nora from the Women's Caucus. We have Mount Holyoke College. We have YWCA Central Mass. We have Blackstone Valley COC. We have Chelsea Women's Commission, which is newly created. Racial Equity Committee. His staff is here. Rep. Arriaga's office is here. We have company international company is here with us. We have Senator Roush's office is with us. We have legal support friends from Massachusetts. We have maternal child health coordinators with us. We have Rep. Kane staff. We have the Cape and the Islands Women's Association Rep. Ramos's office. We have Rep. Dom. We have an intern from the Joint Committee on Racial Equity and Civil Inclusion, director of the Center for Women in Politics out of UMass Boston. We have the Upper Cape Women's Coalition. I mean, look at that. That's so beautiful. We thank you. We appreciate you. And we also have Metro West Women's Fund, Rep. Karen's office. We have, I missed somebody. Hold on. No, I don't want to miss anybody. Oh, there we go. We have the Leominster Haitian American Community Center. And it's phenomenal. Thank you, everyone. And now back to Shaitia for Q&A.
Thank you. And again, thank you for spending this hour with us. I do want to give time for questions. If folks have any, drop them in the chat. You can drop them in our Q&A. And like I said, please always stay in touch with us. We have a survey. If you would be so kind to give us some feedback on this presentation. We're always seeking feedback. And this is also an opportunity to do some of your own advocacy. We also ask about things that you care about in your community, and you can list that in the feedback survey. You can always email us at mcsw@mass.gov. And with that, it looks like we might be wrapping up.
So thank you, everybody, for so much for joining us for this virtual legislative briefing. And while the issues we face are multiple, together we can tackle anything. Again, we value your input and would be grateful if you would take our brief exit survey. You can scan the QR code on your screen if you're able, and we'll also be sharing a link in the chat and the follow-up email. We invite you to stay plugged in to the MCSW, join our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, on X, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or join us for any of our upcoming events. Thank you so much, and please stay involved, and let's get these things passed this legislative session. Thank you.